At the T-minus 3-minute mark, tape recorders on board the spacecraft were turned on. These recorders record both voice and data.
WOMM LP operating out of Burlington, Vermont, 105.9 The Radiator. Good evening, it's The Rocket Shop. I'm your host, Tom Proctor, and with me tonight is Jason Baker. Hello.
Hi, Tom. How are you doing?
I'm good. Welcome back to The Rocket Shop.
Thank you very much for having me back. I really appreciate it.
You know what? I probably said the end of last time would always be glad to have you back, so I'm glad you came through with it.
Yeah, well, I finally have something new to show off, so we'll...
Well, talking of which, we always like starting with a song. So what have you got for us?
This will be the title track of my new album, which is due out any day now. We'll talk about that in a minute. It's called Common Man Blues. I'm just a man, a common man, and I'm singing that common man blues. I work so hard, I work so hard, I work both night and day to make some bread, to make some bread. Yes, I take whatever they will pay. I'm just a man, a common man, singing that common man. The time has come, the time has come, the time has come for the people to rise and make it right, a general strike, where we can look into our kids' eyes. But I'm just a man, a common man, and I'm singing that common man. I know what I am asking of you who are like me, but none of us have time to escape the rising sea. It will be hard, it will be hard, but hard's just what we do. We can endure, yes. The best way out is always through. But I'm just a man, a common man, and I'm singing that common man blues.
Jason Baker with a title track from his new album, Common Man Blues.
Thank you very much.
And so, new album. And I'd like to start to talk a little bit about that title track and why you selected that particular song, or really why you picked this particular title for your album.
Well, a couple reasons for that. So the song starts with, as you might note, a sort of cop on the Fanfare for the Common Man by Aaron Copland. Not accurately played, I might note, but I noticed that it lent itself to a sort of blues interpretation of that sound. And of course, I just thought, so I started there and I wrote a mess of lyrics. And I was trying to fit them into some type of blues form. And then I happened to have the luck going to a folk music conference where there was a workshop, actually a mentor opportunity with David Amram, jazz piano player for Jack Kerouac and the Beats, and composer of many avant-garde symphonies and things like that. He goes to these things and he's happy to jam with people. And he was exploring, he said, let's just do it as a 12-bar. Because 12-bar's got a really great, there's a lot there. And so I ended up cutting, we just rammed through it. He says, just sing it. And he started playing, and it's David Amram. So I sang. And I, right on the spot, just cut lyrics right on the spot and realized I didn't have time to sing this and I didn't have time to sing that. So all this extra stuff fell to the wayside and it was left with sort of the core of the song. And so that was really inspiring to work with him on that. And just, I think I just like the idea of Fanfare for the Common Man. I always liked the piece when I was a kid. I like the notion of updating that in my way for my sort of style of music. Because I think it's time. I think there's just a lot of talk about who is the person that speaks for the common man, and I think the common man speaks for the common man is pretty obvious, not anyone else.
Well, I was going to say, I thought it was an interesting turn of phrase, common man blues, because the blues is the songs for the common man. You don't get really. I mean, there's an ironic rich men blues, but
That's right. Well, I mean, but it's a double. As with everything I do, there's a double meanings hidden there. Of course, being an average person nowadays is kind of a bummer. Let's face it, the world's not in a great spot for your average Joe. That'll give you the blues for sure. So sing about it. And I do attempt as usual to point to solutions within the lyrics without being preachy, I hope, as we talked about last time.
Well, as in terms of the content of the lyrics, there's a focus there on climate change. Which is an issue that we're all facing, common or not. Is this album got those similar themes throughout the record? Is there a spot on each track for those wider issues that are being experienced by all of us?
Most of the tracks are, as with my debut album last year, most of the tracks are topical in nature. There's one song that's a bit more personal, existential, called Entropy Always Wins, and that's more of a another life sucks kind of song. But then I also have a celebratory song about music called We Don't Know Any Better, and that song I got friends of mine to come and sing with me on my new recording. Rick Polari and Janice Rosati came and they sang, and Rick played for the first time, he played the banjo uke on a recording. He said he'd never been recorded his banjo ukulele, or banjolele as some people call it. So he got to work out his inner George Formby and play on my little jug band song, but celebrates music. However, the rest of the songs, it's just what comes out of me. There's a point where I have to admit that that's what's happened. That's what's happening in the world. And I think if I'm writing these songs, as I said in our previous interview, I write all kinds of songs on all kinds of topics. But when you see a theme and a consistent or a consistent style coming out, it's good to go with that flow. So one of the songs is about species extinction. One of the songs is about climate refugees. One of those, but they go. Not every song is. I've sort of focused a little more tightly, I think, on issues and still tried to walk that line of not being preachy, which is hard. Not just you can't really just say you can't just come out and say it in a lot of ways, because that's not really reaching. It's not, it's not fun. So there's got to be a way to say it that's a little bit funny, perhaps, a little bit, intellectually stimulating, maybe, hopefully, or any, anything to, to comment on the topic intelligently, and not just sort of point fingers or yell or whatever in a song. That's not really being an editorial is not what people are looking for. More of a story.
Right. I guess also you don't really want to just write a protest chant. You want to actually write a song.
I would love to be able to write a protest chant, but they're hard. Actually, they're really hard to write. It turns out, to really a good one. It's not that easy, actually. And in fact, you can. I dare you. It's hard. It's really, really hard to do well. And the people who did write stuff that people can sing together in groups, for those types of purposes, I respect those people. I mean, there's nothing like Woody Guthrie or Pete Seeger, to hold up as your standard for sure. That'll those guys are way beyond me in in so many respects.
Right, and you got to appreciate the ability to give people a concise idea in just a few short words, or a very complex idea in some concise words.
Pete Seeger said Woody Guthrie is a genius because he's so simple. Any idiot can do complicated, but it takes genius to do simplicity.
Right.
And that's really true in many ways. In so many ways. Although, hey, I've played some of these songs and I've gotten people to sing along. So, maybe some of them will work that way.
Right. Well, fingers crossed. Maybe some of them will take off, and you'll have the next anthem sung at the climate protests. Well, it looks like you're all ready to get good for a song, and I'd love to hear another one.
Well, I just wanted to make sure I was ready for whenever you're. Sounds like we're still in tune here. Yeah, so I've been writing a bunch of different types of issue songs that just popped out for different things. And some of them came out because I was concerned about the issue, and some of them the title or something else inspired it. This was just a title, a line that came out, and so the title is "You've Run Out of Places to Go," and it's essentially attempts to capture the feeling of what it's like to go homeless. No describing the feeling when the world crumbles about you. Events will set you reeling and life just rolls on without you. If this was a movie, it'd be a black comedy. If this was a play, it'd be called a tragedy. You try to speak, but the words don't flow. You never felt so goddamn low. There is no one left that you know when you've run out of places to go. Victim of the entropy that leads to all destruction, a waste of all the energy that went into seduction. If this was a TV show, it'd be a big surprise hit. Who doesn't want to watch a man's whole life turn to this? You try to speak, but the words don't flow. You never felt so goddamn low. There is no one left that you know, and you've run out of places to go. When the calls stop coming and the money stops coming too, when you are jobless, poor, sick, and homeless too. It ain't a goddamn TV show and it ain't a stupid play. It's an old song that we used to know, and it's sung the same old way. You try to speak,
Places to Go by Jason Baker there. And so, taking a bit of a different tack, still a socially conscious song. I was curious about how you pick the subjects that you end up writing about. Is it that you're just reading the newspaper or going online, or is it you're really actually laying down these items that mean things to you? How is it that you pick these ideas?
Well, in that case, that phrase "you've run out of places to go" was offered as a song prompt, as a theme, really not as a title prompt. But I took it as it's too long for a title, but I so naturally, like to buck rules and decided I'm going to use it as a title, and it really ended up, I think, working out for the song itself. Okay, and I think the important part for that was to say to myself, all right. It suggests, the suggestion that popped in my head as well. It was just what is the feeling, and so I attempted to try and tell a story from the point of view of the person to some extent, who was experiencing a whole bunch of series of bad luck and having life just go wrong, because that's how you get homeless. It's not really, it's not. We have this now demonization of homeless people to the point where now poor people are being locked up. And I think this is getting out of hand, because it's anybody can get homeless with just a series of unfortunate events, as they say, just a couple different things and a missed paycheck and an accident, and suddenly, you're out of your house, and you're out of other, and it multiplies. Being poor, it costs more. It costs more to be poor than it costs to be rich. You can't afford a good night's sleep. You can't work properly. You can't, afford a dentist, a dental cleaning today. You're going to do a root canal next year, that kind of thing. So it's, it becomes like there's a feeling when things happen like that things are spinning out of control. And I was attempting to capture that in the song. That's, again, attempting to capture, have people feel a thought, as Yip Harburg said. He's one of my favorite songwriters. Wrote "Brother, Can You Spare a Dime" and all the lyrics for The Wizard of Oz, including "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." And he had a famous, wonderful quote, which is, "Words can make you think a thought. Music can make you feel a feeling, but a song can make you feel a thought." And that's, so that's where I was headed with that, trying to get the feeling in there.
When you write, is it often that you go into these prompts? Are you looking for these prompts to write something, or is that just one arrow in your quiver, if it will?
One of many things. You mentioned like reading the news. There's songs that I do that are literally, one of the songs on the album is just from watching the news one day, basically for an hour and a half or so, and kind of just noting the things that came up, this litany of weird, horrible, and strange things. Everything from the topic of the day of kids inside of cages, that's a lyric in the song, to a random iceberg blocking a town in Greenland, or the leader of the Philippines, committed blasphemy, just random headlines started popping in. So it actually ends up, informing the song a bit, because it's like, it sort of sums up what the chorus is trying to say and that sort of thing. So that, those types of things do happen, but it comes from anywhere. It can literally come, several of the songs I wrote in this album, the music came first. And I thought, well, that's suggestive of something positive, or that's suggestive of, so I actually tried to write, I had one song that the first set of lyrics were awful because they were just a list of complaints. And I looked at it and I'm like, that's a terrible list of complaints. I got to stop that. And so I decided this music is so beautiful, I'm going to write something positive. So that, it'll take you in whatever direction whatever direction your mind wants it to go in. It's important to be open to that. That's actually one of the most difficult parts of songwriting, is just being open to the moment when your mind's just going to go do something and not edit it until you're sure, you don't want to, until you've messed it up. You're sure, okay, that's terrible or something. But give it a try.
Right.
Because you never know what can end up as a decent song.
And you mentioned you went to this folk festival and you played with some legends. Jack Kerouac's piano.
Yeah, David
Sorry.
Amram played. He became famous playing piano with all the beats, and he was just hanging around those guys,
Right.
and they needed a piano player. So if you listen to Jack Kerouac and you're hearing a piano player, good 50-50 chance it's him. But he also writes symphonies based on Native American music and that sort of thing. He's just a very he's in his 80s now.
I was going to say
he's quite old.
He must be kicking it a bit.
Yeah, he's still going though. He's still got all this. He's still crazy partying at like drumming at 2 a.m. in the morning. You'll see him there. But yeah, it's really great to meet. I got to meet. This is a folk music industry conference, not just a folk festival. So I got to meet David Amram. Take a performance workshop with a guy named Vance Gilbert, who's just an amazing singer-songwriter, folk singer, performer. The keynote speaker was Dar Williams, so I happened to just say to her as she was walking by, "I loved your book," and she stopped dead, and because nobody had mentioned her book on urban planning, which she came out with last year, and I was just like, "I love this book," and I just loved your book. I just wanted to say hi, and she stopped, and she's like, "I'm so glad somebody read my book." So that was cool. She's like, "Are you an urban planning geek too?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess so. I care about the community, that's for sure."
That's an interesting intersection of urban planning and folk singing.
She
Although
wrote
not that unusual, actually, if you think about it.
She wrote this book, What I Learned in a 1,000 Towns, and it's about she travels around and she was able to see what works in certain towns and what doesn't work in terms of what she calls positive proximity. What creates a scene in a town is a difficult thing to quantify. It's a sort of there's a synergy that happens when things are just placed in a certain way and are organized in a certain way. And she noted, that. Which town she sort of reviews, these towns are doing it this way, these towns are doing it this way, here's the story of these towns that have created an ongoing urban music scene or whatever that is self-sustaining because of these three institutions or something like that. She'll mention it. It's a pretty interesting book.
So what I was curious about is this folk symposium that you went to, folk industry festival gathering. How much did that influence the album that you came and wrote? Because getting that kind of professional input must have quite an effect on the way that you perform and write and play.
Interestingly, it's a subtle effect, but it did occur. It was immediately upon returning home, I actually wrote two songs in a completely different fashion. Like I think I mentioned just a few minutes ago, writing music first. Mm-hmm. And two pieces of music popped out of nowhere, and just I had to come up with words for them, which was different. And in both cases, the socially conscious music of the entire conference was focused on sort of social consciousness in some sense. There was an indigenous music gathering and that sort of thing. And so there are things in that. So you might have seen on PBS the movie Rumble about Native American influence in music. That was being shown there, and there was a little keynote speech on that. And one of the songs I wrote, I realized afterwards was it's in duple meter and has a falling melody line, just like grass dance powwow music, that I learned about in college and that sort of thing. So it's like it's in there. And stuff comes out when it's stirred up in that way. So that it stirred up, the song about climate refugees was stirred up by Woody Guthrie songs that people were singing. Anything can bring it to the fore.
Well, I'd love to hear another song. What
Sure.
have you got for us now?
We're gonna bring the harmonic key back for this one. Just for the intro, though. So yeah, this is another long title challenge, and this is more of a generic statement of the state of the union, as it were. It's when I heard this phrase, which was supposed to be a theme, again, not a title or whatever. It's just a phrase somebody put out there. I decided it works for me. So it's called The Great Big Wide Open Divide. This country is divided, and it's only getting worse. Everyone's decided, and now we're all cursed. Trapped in one position, by what? We don't know. No thought above suspicion for minds that do not grow. It's the great, big, wide, open divide. A gap so big, it's now a thing of pride. It's the great, big, wide, open divide. It's them or us. You better pick a side. Please forgive the redundancy. It's just how we all talk now. It's all part of the lunacy. Ignore the why and how. You think too much about it, it'll only cause you grief. To try to speak without it, suspend all your beliefs. It's the great, big, wide, open divide. A gap so big, it's now a thing of pride. It's the great, big, wide, open divide. It's them or us. You better pick a side. Red or blue, black or white, rich or poor, me and you. All we ever do is fight. Fighting's all we ever do. As we hurt each other, we're hurting our own hearts. As sisters and as brothers, we never been so far apart. It's the great, big, wide, open divide. The gap so big, it's now a thing of pride. It's the great, big, wide, open divide. It's them or us. You better pick a side. It's the great, big, wide, open divide. A gap so big, it's now a thing of pride. Just look at it.
The great big wide open divide. You sound almost proud of the gap at the end there.
Well, people should not forget that pride is a sin, perhaps.
So let's talk a little bit about your second album. So it's out, it's not out, it's kind of out. The song's up on your website at the moment.
Okay, so you can go to my website, jbakervt.com, jbakervt.com, and you can stream most of the album, 9/10 of the album, for free, except for the title track, which is sort of still being post-productioned just to get it right. Once that's done, the digital distribution and CDs will be ordered and all that. So it'll be the problem with releasing things nowadays is that there's no hard date on that. I submit it for digital distribution. Spotify will have it in a week, YouTube in 2, or something. In other words, there's no way of predicting. But I'll announce them on my website, and you can find me on Facebook as well, and stuff like and Instagram, and I'll announce it on all of those things anytime something goes live on a new service. I'll just announce the album's on this service now and go get it if that's your favorite service. But for now, it's all going to be streamable for free, as my first album was. You can if you really want to download it, yeah, you can pay, and that would be awesome. It would be nice to have the money, but my feeling is people should hear the music, and so it's streamable for free anytime. And at the website, jbakervt.com, you can go ahead and stream right there on the website.
Wonderful. And so this is your second album. And I've talked a lot with other artists about first album versus second album. And often a lot that happens in the second album is a reaction to the lessons learned in the first album. So what lessons did you learn in the first album? How did this alter the second album? And looking forward, what lessons have you learned in this one that you might change for the next?
That's a great question, because there are a lot of lessons learned. Anytime you do anything like this, you learn more and more each time. From the first album, I learned to... so the first album had 22 songs on it. So this this album's 10 songs. So that's the first lesson I learned, is that much as I might like to include everything that I really think should be, not, you have to make some more decisions, and I can just release a different album. If I definitely have more material ready to go. In fact, I have like 3 other albums in my mind ready to roll already. So it's kind of, that's the lesson I would learn there, is like, segment things by, you know, a little more, so that, because it's not digestible in such huge amounts. No one is going to even bother trying to tackle that, except in bits and pieces. So songs that might have made it on this album are now going to be, actually, I got 6 songs already written for a musical about the political situation in Burlington, Vermont. Which, if anybody's out there who wants to do a musical, contact me.
That's a niche musical right there.
Yeah, sure it is. Well, I don't know. There could be universal lessons in it. And then in other words, I have several other albums already from that, experience. Like, say, okay, I'm gonna really think about what I'm gonna put together, what hangs together. So that's from the first album, the main lesson there. And the second was to do better, to try and engage other people and help for getting better recordings. Mm-hmm. Most of that was just done by, one mic, one take in front, myself, with some overdubs, here and there, or a friend sitting and playing guitar with me. This time I did most of the majority of the album is done in studios. Mm-hmm. And actually, I'll just shout out to Robot Dog Studios and Leilani Sound Studios. And that made a lot of difference in the way the sound comes out so far. And that's, I think it sounds, just a little bit better than what I could do on my own, for sure. Even if I had all the time in the world, but mics, you start with better mics, you start with any type of thing like that. So that's the other second lesson I learned from the first album. Now this one, I would say the lesson I'm going to learn is just not an easy one to resolve with it, but it is, so you can take any amount of time making an album. There's no too much time making an album. And that's kind of a bummer, because I just need to get this out, because there's so many other things that I just need the songs out there. So I could go back through this right now and add so many things or change so many things already. But I just don't really feel, I feel like I've done, I did a good job on this. I don't need to change it again. In other words, there's always something you want to do more on, I guess, you want to continue to add or tweak. And there's a point where you have to let go and get it done. And that's, so there's no limit to the amount of time, if you have the money that you could put into making an album and making it better and better and better. Although I imagine there must be some point where it doesn't get better. But, I think you either are satisfied or you start screwing it up because your mind starts going or something. That's possible. I've not had that luxury, I would say, of being in the studio too long, sadly. Conversely,
it seems, I've spoken to a couple of artists that have got lucrative day jobs, should we say, and when you do have the resources, it's also very easy just to stick down a quality album in a very, very short amount of time, because you can just rock up to the studio whenever and pay the fees and get something out there if it really is pressing in your own head. So I mean, it's kind of that, there's the juxtaposition there. So is if like 99% of the rest of us, where we don't have that luxury, you kind of like sit in that middle kind of that space.
Well, preparation is also key, I guess, is that in that case, is like, if you have, when your time comes, be ready and know what you want. Also, at the same time, be open to things happening and other people's ideas. But yeah, if you're not rehearsed, or people don't know their parts or something, you're just wasting time. That kind of thing. That's not going to work. But yeah, it can go. Say there is no. I've not had that luxury, and I would love to have the luxury of having more studio time. And that's the lesson, I guess, I would say is the thing. I can't wait to do it again, because it was fun, especially bringing in guests like Rick Polari, to play. He played banjo and banjo uke and sang and played the kazoo and have a friend playing the tambourine and singing along to songs, and it's really fun. It's more fun than you might, even though it's work. It is work. It is just more fun with other people, and the more people you can involve, it really made it for a great experience for me.
Rick really brings the energy as well. We've interviewed Rick a few times, and the level of experience that he brings to the table is immeasurable. The songs that he sang on, is there kind of a notable difference? Is there kind of there's more depth? Can you feel his energy come through?
Well, you can certainly hear, because he makes a point of singing something different than whatever everyone else is singing, and he's got like me, he has a good deep baritone voice. So he noticed that he decided to take the low end, and so you can hear him sort of bellowing on there, and it's it's cool. And it contrasted by the kazoo on the same track, which is kind of fun. It adds a kind of zaniness to the whole thing, and that's really nice. It was just nice to have fun, let people have people come in and just add something that they felt was, and they were amazing. The Janice Rosati came in and added harmony vocals. And, having basically heard the tracks maybe 24 hours before, she worked out her own harmony vocals. They were perfect right out of the bat. You can't beat musicians like that. That's just a great feeling to hear. And it was fun beyond what I was expecting. I guess I was expecting a grind, and it was a lot more fun than that.
Well, so you said you've got songs already stacked up waiting to be made into a third album. This album only came out a year after your first one. So what are your plans for your third one? And kind of harking back to the question I asked before, what would you do differently in this third album?
Well, that's the thing. I might do a couple different things. For a third album, I might throw out, because I have the opportunity. I might have the opportunity to do so cheaply. The way I'm set up right now, I can add another digital distribution, and I might take some of the stuff that I've got as work tapes and throw something out there as well. That's not worrying about it is another lesson to learn. Is that it depends on what you're going to do with it. But I wouldn't promote that as like, this is my third album. I would just say like, this is my collection of stuff. It's another album. It's fun or whatever. It's extra things if you like it. Part of this is there's songs that that aren't part of my brand as a performer. And that might be nice to actually have them out there, but not present them as, this is my branded stuff, which is, topical songs. These are, my silly jazz songs or whatever, these are my weird folk songs or whatever it is that's not in that normal genre. It might be nice to throw some of that stuff out of there just to get it out. But as I just said, I've got these other notions of a formal album, and that I've got a lot more material essentially that's in development that I would like to, that has a very traditional folk feel, for example, and I'd like to develop that. Some of that's written, some of that's not fully written, and some of that's partially written. I'd like to work, like to see where it goes. In that vein, I've talked with Rick and Rick Pilleri, and he and I are talking about doing an album together of just strictly traditional folk music. Because we had such fun, of just strictly traditional folk songs that are, public domain, and just having a good time doing that. And that I would love to take some time on and make it, make each track, a unique item, add exactly what is needed and not anything more. And that, so that's where I would be more like, so something like that might be fun to do next, a more careful album, but also, like I said, just taking the stuff and just throwing it out there, letting people hear it. That's also appealing to me.
Yeah, I like the idea of a concept album, especially with Rick, and maybe doing something a bit different. Because 2 albums in 2 years, you kind of maybe need to take that step back from your own work and do something else for a little while and come back into it in order to get that different perspective. But I don't know. I mean, if you got those songs in your head, you sometimes just need to get them out.
Well, that's the question. So we were talking earlier about the type of, like, the people who write protest songs and things like that. And obviously my music, some people would say, oh, it's protest music. But, maybe a couple of these songs, I don't see people chanting them in a march necessarily. There might be some sing-along potential there for some of this, but it's topical material rather than a protest song. Or as the manager at Radio Bean described it to a customer, he said, "What is this?" "Oh, well, it's socio-political Americana." That's what she came up with. And I was like, that's reasonable. I think of I feel that when I started out writing, I thought I was doing singer-songwriter stuff. And then and then depending on the person's personal place in music, they would either call it some genre based upon whatever their genre was. So a fair number of people would say, well, that sounds like folk music. Not, like, okay, it's a guitar, acoustic guitar and a guy singing, but not everything that's an acoustic guitar and a guy singing is folk music. But okay, and then other people, so the country people would say it sounds like Americana. The Americana people would say it sounds like folk. The folk music people would say it sounds like rock music played on an acoustic guitar. And that's, everybody would say something different about it. So the genre for me when I really analyze it, the music is sort of based on folk music, folk roots. Looking honestly at it, I didn't really realize I was doing that, but that's just sort of naturally what I gravitated to. Blues, bluegrass, ragtime, country blues, that whole variety of certain types of acoustic-based, typically, music. And so there have a respect for essentially old-time music is what I would call the base of the music. But the lyrics are completely not old-time for the most part up until this point. And I think one of the things that those people who wrote great protest songs did was manage to write stuff that sounded as old as the tree, as old as the hills, and that's hard to do effectively and still be honest, not trick people, but write in a way that's honest and a little more poetic and less modern in perspective, perhaps, but still modern enough in perspective. In other words, not hearkening back to some fake nostalgia or something, but just hearkening back to a different type of expression. There's some, and I can't put my finger on it. I don't know that it's necessarily just an old thing, but there's something about certain language that brings people together that allows the way the language and the music go together, that allows people to sing together or moves them to do so. I'd be interested in coming up with stuff that reached into that depth. That's where I'm trying, it's sort of, so it becomes how do I push what I'm writing to become, less, more like that, less like the other, less intellectual, more feeling, less, or whatever it is that it takes, whatever it is that it takes to, you'll know it when you see it, kind of thing. You won't know, and it's hard to define. If I knew how to define it in actual, I'd be there already. So when it happens.
It's about you turning those dials to the right point until you think you've got it right, and it resonating with those around you.
You have to try it. Yeah. Songwriting is a whole lot of failure. You just that line stinks. This whole song stinks. And part of my practice is to complete a song and be like, that's done. Put it aside and just say I'll save it, but it's terrible. And to say but for the exercise of knowing that something's going, that was a dumb idea. Halfway through, maybe I'll abandon it, but sometimes I'll just finish it just to prove I can do it, and then I'll just say, boy, that was dumb. What a dumb song. But parts of it might appear in another song, a chord progression, a single phrase, something might come out of that. So it gets put in a folder called meh. That's what I call it.
Well, I'm glad it at least gets recycled and put to good use, even if initially it doesn't seem like it's worth much.
Well, I got the idea from a John Prine interview. It was an old interview, so I assume he's upgraded to actually working on a computer. But he talked about, someone said, how do you get inspiration for writing songs? He goes, I don't. I get up in the morning and I go to my office. I'm usually there by 9. I write 10 songs a day and I leave at 5. And most of them end up in the recycle bin. And I just thought, wouldn't I love to clean out that recycle bin?
Yes.
John Prine's throwaways, you know.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, his point is you just do it over and over and over again. You're a professional songwriter. You just keep writing songs, and he said most of them are terrible. Right. Most of his songs. To think about that to John Prine.
In his perspective, they're terrible. I'm sure to many people it'd be absolute gold. We've got about time for one last song, but before you go, please plug any gigs you got coming up, and let's hear that website again.
Okay, I'll be at Radio Bean tomorrow night, Thursday night, 8:30, and then I'll be down at Gusto's in Barrie on the 27th. I believe it's 27th. Yeah, 26th or 27th, and later this month, in other words. And I'm actually going to be going to the Ripton Community Coffee House open mic this Saturday night. There's a wonderful band from Sweden playing. They sing protest music. I've secured a spot in the open mic, and it's really a lovely. If anyone listening hasn't been to the Ripton Community Coffee House, it is a really great experience. It's a lovely listening room, and it's like only $10. So that's that. And the website is, again, jbakervt.com, jbakervt.com. It's pretty easy to remember. And that's where you can stream my music for free and buy it if you really like it.
Wonderful. Well, what song you got left to play us out with?
We're going to do, this is a song that Rick and Janice guested on the album. And it's a climate change related one. We knew we had to get to that at some point because I can't do the Rocket Shop without playing a climate change song, right? I have to mention it somewhere. This one was inspired by a news item, which was Harvard and Bill Gates signed some agreement, and other people signed an agreement to work together on geoengineering a solution to block out the sun to combat climate change. And so the absurdity of the whole notion, of course, I think there was a Facebook comment, someone said, of course, let's not, fighting, getting rid of capitalism is just too hard, so let's fight the sun. So this song is called Let's Fight the Sun. It's too hard to change what we're doing, so let's fight the sun. Even though we know there's a catastrophe brewing, let's fight the sun. Can't prove that it was big oil who did it. Let's fight the sun. Even though we know they knew the truth and then they hid it. Let's fight the sun. Yeah, blocking out the sun is usually a job for the moon. But now we can expect an eclipse every day at noon. Let's fight the sun, yeah. Let's fight the sun. Even though we were told about how this would go. Let's fight the sun. Even though we knew exactly what we should have known. Let's fight the sun. Even if we do agree that people are to blame. Let's fight the sun, even though it's kind of late at this stage of the game. Let's fight the sun, yes, well, blocking out the sun. Perhaps you did not think this through. 'Cause fighting the sun might not be a smart thing to do. Let's fight the sun, yeah. Let's fight the sun. Let's fight the sun, yes.
Let's Fight the Sun by Jason Baker playing us out. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Well, as I said, many times. So join us next week. We have got a great show coming up. Dwight Nicole will be in, and Maple Run, I will not be here. So either our good producer Bob will be interviewing, or someone else. We have some people lined up. So, and even more special Rocket Shop lined up for you next week. I'll be back in 2 weeks. So, ciao till then. Good night.